Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. If you're new to the channel, my name's Shep, and we've got a really nice 2023 Road Glide up here on the lift. And hopefully you guys can see that this bike's already got a whole bunch of stuff done to it. I personally think most of it were really good choices. I don't love all of it, but it's not my bike, so not for me to say. But there is one glaring thing on here that's actually something that was already done once that we're gonna redo, and we're gonna redo it better. So what we're installing on this bike is basically everything Kraus from the top triple tree up. So we've got a Kraus top triple tree to go on, we've got Kraus risers, we've got ODI bars, ODI grips, but we've also got the Kraus gauge relocation kit to go on. So this is gonna be real nice and real clean when we're all done with it, and we're gonna do it the right way and get everything on here real nice, get all the wires tucked in, and this bike is gonna look a whole lot better, in my opinion. But more importantly than that, it is gonna handle like a whole new bike. Getting rid of these ape hangers and swapping over to a T-bar setup. If you've never ridden a bike that's had that change done to it, well, you're missing out. If you're still about the old school ape hangers, that's fine for you, but this video is probably just gonna make you mad rather than anything else. But if you want to see the best bars and risers and accompanying stuff go onto a bike, then this is the video for you, because we're going to start doing that right now. All right, so full disclosure, I've actually already taken the first two steps in getting this job done. And the first one of those steps is disabling the ignition switch. The ignition switch is going to get deleted, so we need to disable it. So now it doesn't do anything, and the power for the bike is controlled just by the switch here. That's the first step, did that already off camera. Second step is to start the disassembly. And really where we start with that is getting the gauge cluster removed. And there are 4 screws holding, it's a little hard to get my hands in here, but 4 screws holding the plastics on the sides of the forks. Those screws are much easier removed with the bike on the ground, because you can turn the bars from side to side and just get in there with a long wrench. You can do it this way, it's just much harder. So I've already taken those bolts out. So that's my disclaimer to start off. But other than that, really haven't done anything. So I'm just gonna start by, like I said, doing some disassembly. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get our ignition switch removed. I'm gonna remove the gauge housing. I'm gonna remove these plastics here. Then we'll have access to our handlebar switches and to the top triple tree. So we won't be taking the bars off the risers or the risers off the triple tree. We're just gonna remove the top triple tree with the bars and risers connected to it, take that whole thing off as one piece after we get everything else stripped off. So that's where we're gonna start. So let's go. All right, so with all of the disconnections done here and all that stuff out of the way, all we've got to do is strip the handlebars and we'll be able to pull everything off. So I'm gonna start by getting the perches removed, and then we'll pull our switch pods out. This bike's got heated grips on it. I'm gonna just leave those connected since we won't be reusing them. More about that later. But let's get these handlebars stripped, and then we'll get this removed from the bike. Okay, well, things don't always go according to plan. So I did get this side stripped off. This side really shouldn't be a big deal to pull these wires through, particularly if the bars are original. But depending on what somebody did on an aftermarket, install, this is a little stuck. So the twist grip is a little bit stuck in the bar, and the wires are a little bit stuck. So the easiest thing for me to do is going to be to leave this stuff on for the moment. We'll take everything, we'll take the triple tree off, like I said before. We'll take everything over to the workbench and we'll get this stuff taken off on the bench. I like to do it here normally because the bike does a pretty good job of holding the bars for you, so you can just do everything. But when it gets a little bit sticky, it's better just to stop and come up with a new plan. So I'm gonna get this disconnected. We'll pull this whole thing off, bring it over to the workbench, and we'll catch up with you there. All right, got it all out. I actually like what somebody did here. This is something I typically do, which is on these twist grip sensors, it comes with a big plastic wire loom on it that takes up a lot of space in the bars. So I'll typically cut that off and wrap it with exactly what somebody did here, like a wire loom tape, which makes it a lot smaller and a lot easier to get through the bars. So we got that out, got the switches or the switch control out. So we are pretty much done with this. If you're familiar with the Kraus handlebar setups, you won't be reusing your ignition switch like I mentioned. We've got a replacement fork lock because we're going to be using the Kraus lower triple tree, so we don't lose that. We've got new risers, new bars, new triple tree. So all this stuff is going to go in the takeoff box, and we'll get started on getting our new stuff ready to go on. All right, so they say there are 100 ways to skin a cat. I think there are equally as many ways to install bars onto a bike. So everybody has their own preference in the order of how they do things and what they assemble kind of on the bench and what they assemble on the bike. I'm gonna do it my way. Maybe you have your own. You can tell me in the comments if you think I'm doing something you don't like, but this way works real well for the way that we do it. So what I like to do is start by getting the handlebars, and obviously what I'm talking about here is for like a T-bar or like a riser tracker bar setup, so like a two-piece T-bar. I like to get the bars wired up, so real simple, just running everything through. Then I put this aside. We'll get the risers mounted onto the bike. In this case, we'll put the risers onto the pullback plate, onto the triple tree, and get all that mounted onto the bike. And then we'll take our wired bars and put them onto the riser. This minimizes the amount of moving around of the handlebar and the riser that leads to scratching them and messing up the coating. So if you assemble it all, including the bars on the bench, you might not get the angle right. It's harder to get them on straight. I find it easier to do on the bike. So in any event, I'm gonna go ahead and get these wired through. I do have replacement wire harnesses for each of these. So the way we wire these, they need to be a lot longer than stock, even though these bars aren't super tall. And even though it had, apes on there, what's here is, these are the original harnesses. They're not long enough. So we've got some extended ones from Gorilla Cables for the switch pods. And then I've also got a throttle by wire extension here that we'll use obviously on the twist grip. So we'll get all this connected and pulled through, and then we'll switch gears and move over to getting the rest of the parts assembled. Then we'll be back to the bike to get it all put on. All right, so there we go. Got our bars all wired up with the twist grip and the two switch pods. And it's worth pointing out, I mentioned we'd talk a little bit about the heated grips later. Well, later is now. So for those of you who don't know, when you run the Moto style tapered handlebars, these do not work with heated grips. These are the ODI version. I'm not aware of any that do. The FM version that we used to use don't work with them either. Pro taper bars, I'm sure don't. Basically, the reason for that is that these bars have a thicker wall, thicker diameter tube. They're made of aluminum, so even though they're aluminum versus steel, they're stronger because they're thicker. That thickness doesn't allow for the heated grips. Now, this customer, you might say, oh, I don't want to lose that. Kraus does make a 1-inch top clamp instead of a 1 1/8 inch top clamp, so you can run regular style 1-inch straight bars or not straight, but untapered 1-inch bars from anyone you want to get them from, whether it's, you know, Thrashin or Biltwell, or there's a million of them out there. And you can run heated grips with those if you want the T-bar setup. But in this case, if you want the true like moto bar, no heated grips, that's the way the customer wanted to go. I'll also point out, for those of you who, you know, have been watching the channel for a while and might wonder why we switched from running the FM bar that Kraus sells to running the ODI bar. Truthfully, I just like these bars better. They're slightly different in their bend. I like the ergonomic feel of them a little better than the FM bar. That's just a personal preference thing. I also think they look a little nicer with the finish. The FM bars are just kind of powder coated. They look fine, but these I think have a little bit more character to them with the, hopefully you can sort of see that, the kind of matte finish on them. If you like them in gloss, there's a version they come in gloss too, and they come in 2 different heights. The FM bars only come in 1. So there's this size that's about 2 inches of rise, then there's one that's about 4 inches of rise. One's a moto bar, one's a tracker bar. ODI makes both of those in both ways, with a 1 1/8 inch clamp and a 1-inch clamp. But anyway, really like these ODI bars, so these are what we're using on all the Kraus setups recently. So, okay, these are done. Let's grab the good stuff. Let's grab the rest of the hard parts. We'll get them assembled here, and then we'll put them over onto the bike. All right, so getting into the fun stuff here. We've got our new triple tree. Obviously, I shouldn't have to go into too much detail on this. Billet aluminum, lighter, stronger, looks better than the factory one. Think enough said. We've got our riser, and this riser, I believe, is an 8-inch total height riser. So we combine this 8-inch riser with the 2 inches of height that we get from the Raptor pullback plate, which also gives us pullback as well, but also going to give you extra height. So that's 10, and then we've got 2 in the bar, so that's 12 total, which is what the customer's looking for. So we're going to put the pullback plate onto the triple tree, the riser onto the pullback plate. And I've also got a clamp here, which you'll see us use later to mount the gauge. I'm going to put that onto the triple tree, onto the riser now, because it makes life a little easier to run the wires through if this is already there. And one more piece I've got to grab is the fork lock. So we'll grab that and throw that in here as well. So we'll get this all assembled and be ready to move on. All right, so that is our riser triple tree pullback plate assembly all put together, real simple. And we're just gonna take this and go drop it on the bike, and then we'll get the bars put in, and we'll be kind of most of the way there. All right, guys, quick interruption in the video. I'm coming to you from the end of it. Maybe you can see a little sneak peek of the final product behind me. Just wanted to call out a couple of things. The first thing is that any of the parts we used in this build, you can find them on our website, ironanchorcycles.com. We'll also try and put some links to the more common ones down in the description below. That's number one. Number two, it would mean a lot, big help to the channel. If you're watching this video right now and you're liking what you're seeing, subscribe to the channel, like the video, do all those YouTube things for us. It's a huge help to the channel. Doesn't cost you guys anything but a second of your time, and it's a big help to us. So that's all I wanted to say. Now back to the video. All right, so like I said, ready to drop this guy onto the bike. I've got a couple little wedges made out of Delrin. Just kind of tapped them in here and took these bolts out to try to spread these open a little bit so they drop smoothly over the fork tubes. Usually it's a pretty tight fit. We'll see how this drops on. We'll just kind of work it into place, and we'll give it a little tap with a hammer if need be. All right, so with the top clamp in place, I'm just gonna put a little moly lube on the bolts and we'll just get those installed. And we're gonna torque the pinch bolts on the fork legs to 20 foot-pounds. Then I'm gonna torque the pinch bolts on the steering stem to 28 foot-pounds. All right, so with all this secure now, next step is to get the bars dropped on. So what I'm gonna do here, this is a pretty easy one. We've only got 3 wires to put through here. Just gonna feed these wires through, and then I will drop the handlebars in place, and we will put the top clamp on. All right, so with our bars nice and straight, all clamped down, my next step before we get the gauges put on or we deal with the wiring is, I'd like to get this stuff that's just kind of sitting here out of the way. So we're just gonna get the bars kind of reassembled. So we'll get the housings for the switch pods put on, and then we'll get the master cylinder and clutch perch, all that bolted on along with the new grips. So we'll get all that stuff buttoned up on the bars, pretty straightforward. Then we'll jump back over here and get our gauge on and get the wiring tucked in, and we'll be pretty close to done. All right, so with the bars pretty much done, we gotta get our gauges set up to go on. So we've got the new gauge housing from Kraus. We've got the extension block that's gonna go onto the back of here and connect onto the bracket that we put onto the risers. We've got our original gauges just wiped off, and harness extension. So this extension has to go on here. You'll see it while you're putting this together. Nice clean install. It's got a cover on the back. So put this together and we'll get it on the bike. Okay, so back over here at the bike, if I didn't mention before, with this particular setup, you've got sort of an infinite number of ways you can mount these. We always opt for the T-bar clamp with the extension block because the T-bar clamp can be moved up and down. It can be mounted on the back of the riser like this. It could be mounted on the front of the riser like this if you want your gauges up here. They also do make a mount that goes right onto the onto the riser here, so you can just mount your gauges like that. While it looks like you might want your gauges here right above the bars, they'll block your screen, but actually if you tuck the gauges down in here, you'll actually, I know it looks like they'll be blocked based on the angle you're at and I'm at right now, but as you're sitting on the bike, because your eyes are gonna be looking down like this, you'll actually get a perfect view of both the gauges and the screen if you tuck them right down here. So this setup works perfectly for that, so that's how we always do it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get this bolted on to the bracket here, get the alignment correct, tighten it down, and then we'll get our wiring buttoned up. Okay, so with the gauges put on, we've just got all our wiring to deal with here now. This is probably gonna be pretty hard for you all to see. I'm just gonna do my best to put the camera there. We'll make the connections and tuck everything in. So my little trick for doing this, you can stuff all the wires in here just by doing that. You're probably gonna get some tangles and some knots and some bloody knuckles. For me, it's easier to remove the outer fairing, which you can see here, it's off. We pull the headlight, and then you're actually able to reach through here from the other side. I don't know if you can see my fingers sticking out there, but you can pull the wiring through that way, the excess, and then you'll have plenty of room to do it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get all these connections made, and we'll get it buttoned up. Well, tried to give you as good a view of that as I could. Hopefully you can see, I don't think you can ask for a cleaner install than that. Everything real tight, real nice, you know, nothing extra sticking out anywhere. So now I've just gotta clean everything up on the inside of the fairing. We'll get the fairing put back on, and we're pretty much done and almost ready to show you guys the final product. All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up. I've got one little piece left to go on. We'll call this the cherry on top, and this is a little plug, a cosmetic cover that's gonna go over the big fork stem nut up here. So just drop this on, and then we tighten it in place. Slide that in there. All right, and that's it. I guess at this point, we'll just give you a little walk around so you can see the whole thing from every angle. And I'll do what I normally do too. I'll sit on it so you can get a sense of that, and I'll give you the info. So said it before, but I'll say it again now. So we've got a total rise of 12 inches. So we've got 2 in the bars, 8 in the riser, 2 in the pullback plate for a total of 12. And I'm about 6'2" with a 32-inch inseam. So I'm gonna sit on the bike. You'll be able to see that, get a sense of how tall they are. But this is on the shorter side of what we typically do on road glides. I wouldn't say it's super short. We go shorter than this, so we've done 10 total, which is very low. But usually 12 or 14 total is pretty normal. This might be a little bit on the low side for me at my height, but certainly if you're under 6 foot, this would probably be the setup I would go with. All right, so here's your view of me on the bike. Obviously, like I said, this is honestly not a bad height for a lot of things. Obviously, a lot of people are looking for a little bit higher, like more like chest height on a set of bars. So if you took these from 12 to 14, for me, I think that would be perfect. But somebody a little shorter than me who wanted higher bars than this, you know, this might be the right setup. But this is, I gotta tell you, I've definitely ridden bikes with 12-inch bars, road glides, and it's actually pretty great. They might feel a little low, but you can really get aggressively down on the bars because you're above them, but you still get that really fine control from the T-bars. So this bike is gonna ride great. It's gonna handle great. It's already got Legend suspension front and rear. So adding the Kraus, ergonomic bar riser, triple tree setup, it's just the last thing this bike needs. So, or I should not say, not the last thing this bike needs, I should say the final thing this bike needs. Yeah, so this is gonna be awesome. So that's gonna wrap up this video, like I said, so we'll catch you on the next one.